What's up, y'all? It's Shuffle, and today's gonna be the final version of the tier list. This is a special, or I should say series that is special to me, because this is kind of how I got started on YouTube. I used to do Let's Plays, and then I made this goofy tier list that, honestly, looking back, I'm really not happy with it. I like that I put a lot of effort into it, but at the same time, it's a lot has changed since then. And there's things I've learned, not just in video making, but also about the game that's changed a lot. But this is the final one. It's been a running joke for a while because I made it into 3 parts. It was like 2.5 hours. People are like, when's part 4 of 3? And I did part 4. And they're like, when's part 5? And I did part 5. And they're like, when's 6? And I said 6 is the last one. So here we are. And before you get started, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. Check out the box below for all the helpful links with all the cool stuff. Leave your thoughts in the comments too, if you have them. Feel free to debate me respectfully or agree, and, you know, say that I'm the most insightful Darkest Dungeon player ever. I'm kidding, but I digress. So for this video, we're gonna go with 3 tiers. As always, knowledge is like double S tier that's just not on there. You know, knowing the game is better than anything else. But outside of that, we are considering heroes when they're not doubled. So characters like Bounty Hunter get much better if you have 2 of them. We're considering their trinkets, we're considering their skills, we're considering who they go with. These are all considerations, but also in the interest of time, I'm not going to... Sorry, that was cat hair. I'm not going to go through everything with a fine-tooth comb like last time. I don't want it to be 2.5 hours. We'll talk about the relevant stuff. So we're going to start with Abomination. Many of you know where I'm going to put Abomination just from that video I made. But what I want to make clear is that no character is bad in this game. I can say this is bad, this isn't useful, or you don't press this button, this is a bad skill, like Flashing Daggers for Grave Robber is my favorite character. I can say these things, but everything can be decent in this game, and the power level between the characters is not much. Like, the power level difference is not much. That's why I think 3 tiers is good enough. So we're gonna start with Abomination. Yes, I think he is the worst character in the game. That's not necessarily because of like the stats and stuff. His stats are pretty solid. It's more because his kit has some issues as a whole. Like, you pretty much just don't want to transform in a lot of cases, but transforming is a lot of damage. And the way you run Human A-Bomb and the way you run Beast A-Bomb are 2 different things. And it's very hard to build a team that can support both, like take advantage of both. So you already have that kind of clash going on. And the bonuses of transforming, like the sudden damage spike and all that, that only lasts for a couple turns. It's not for like the entire battle or something like that, or for the entire beast mode, which kind of sucks. That means that his damage falls off a little bit, and I think the way you're supposed to play this character, or at least the way it's envisioned, is you do like a couple stuns or beast bile, you transform, you hit stuff, you transform back, and then you hit Absolution for like 2 turns. I think that's how they wanted the character to be played, and that's just not how it goes in practice, just because of how dangerous it is to transform. So normally this character gets relegated to spamming manacles. And if you want a fast stun character, there are plenty of others. It was weird, I heard a sound outside and that made me stop. But okay, so I think we're done with Abomination. Still, like I said, still usable, still good. Just compared to everyone else, a little harder to get the most out of, and a little harder to make him feel like really special. So I'm gonna leave him in B. Anti, we're putting in A. Her combat effectiveness is not there, but she does have some incredible buttons. She has Flash Powder, which is one of just the best moves in the game. Flash Powder is really good. You can bully big enemies or bosses or huge threats with it. It can be used from anywhere to hit everywhere, which is really nice. She has Protect Me, which is pretty cool. She has some really good trinkets just across the board. Only like the Blood Course Medallion or whatever, the Healing Receive one, that thing kind of eh. But for the most part, she's good. And even though she doesn't have a lot of combat effectiveness, you can still run her in a team that has like her, Vestal, and Highwayman, and that team will do fine. You can just drop Protect Me on Highwayman, he can hit Riposte, and even if you're not comfortable with Antiquarian or you don't like playing her, that'll get you through most missions. And so she can get you a lot of gold, and even though she's not the best combatant, she is like an S tier estate meta, you know, economic character. Especially if you play on Stygian and Blood Moon, when gold cost is doubled, she really helps to mitigate that impact. So you have her, and if you run her with bank, you can run her a few times, just stack your bank up to like 80k, 100k, something like that, and then your bank is set for like the entire playthrough. So she is really good even with something like the bank, which they kind of seem like they clash, but they actually don't. They synergize pretty well. So because of that, and then there's some advanced strats, like she can hold trinkets for other people. She's really good at trinket swapping in general. She can hold all the support stuff if you want to give everyone else damage, that kind of stuff. So she's, like I said, not the best combatant, but once she gets like veteran and gets into champion and stuff like that, she actually picks up quite a bit. So her early levels kind of suck, but she gets better. And flash powder is always good. So I think Anti is a solid A. She's really tough to rate, but I'm pretty comfortable leaving her in A. And we have Arbalest. So Arb, I'm putting in A. She's a character that I didn't like much at first. And once I stopped treating her like a damage dealer and started treating her like a support, I've liked her a lot more. And so you have pretty, consistent damage in the sniper shot. You can get her some Merc synergy. And she's a character that's like Hellion, where if she crits, she ramps, which means that her damage starts to go really high because her crit bonus is bonus damage against mark targets. So you get one crit, her damage jumps pretty high. You get a second crit on top of that, that crit's going to hit really hard. She can routinely break like 40-50 damage a champion with Mark synergy. So she can be very strong for damage, especially like backline bosses or mini bosses. Collector comes to mind. Someone likes to sit in the back and just get shot. The reason I like her though mostly now is because I think her camp skill is really good. I think that her ability to play main healer is fantastic. So if you don't want to run someone else, if you're short a Vestal or an Occultist, you can run Arbalest, especially once you have medic screens. That's awesome. But suppressing fire, that is the move we have to come back to. Suppressing fire is something I didn't like much at first, but once I was playing more Blood Moon, Torchless, and stuff like that, suppressing fire really stuck out to me because most enemies in the game just by default, there are other outside modifiers you can get, like some enemies just have naturally higher crit, but for most intents and purposes, if you use suppressing fire on most enemies in the game, they cannot crit you. Just straight up, they can't do it. And that is pretty cool. Or if they can crit you, it's like 2%. And I think that is a very powerful thing to have. Just a really tanky backline unit that has some good support skills who can just shut off the enemy backline. The only other character that can do that is Plague Doctor, and Plague Doctor stuns them, and that's its own, pro and con kind of thing. But her being able to do that is good. She can also lower their accuracy by about 20%, I think, at level 5, and that is better than flash powdering 2 people at the same time. This character has a lot of utility, and then she has damage on top of it, so I like her more than I did. I do like sniper archer type playstyles, so I do like her. I'm glad I kind of figured out like more about her, so my opinion changed, but I think A is a good spot. She's definitely not S. Like if she had 8 to 16 damage and something to do up front, then she'd probably be S, but she doesn't have that. But she's a pretty strong A, I would say. Bounty Hunter also A. I wanted to put Bounty Hunter in B, but honestly, this dude can reach from rank 3 all the way up to rank 1 of your party into rank 3 with a melee attack. That's pretty good. So he can hit rank 3 like Cult of Switch and stuff, Spitter Pigs reliably with an axe attack, which is pretty good. And then he has 2 stuns on top of it. So he's very flexible, he has solid damage, and he has reach. And then he can bring some utility with like surprise chance and scouting. Plus his base stats are pretty solid. So if you have someone that has reach, double stuns, or has access to 2 stuns, then how can you not put this dude in A? Really hard to argue against that. Next is one of my favorite characters. It's Crusader. I don't know if this is biased or what, but I'm putting him in S. I've had people argue against this quite a bit over the course of the series, and I understand. But I think it was Thick who said this, and I liked it a lot. He said that, might have been someone else, I can't remember. But this person said that Crusader gets stronger the less resources you have. So if you're in a dungeon and you have 4 people and 1 dies and you have 3, you're going to be happy if one of the surviving ones is Crusader. If you're running some kind of challenge run, and you need someone that can do a bit of healing and stress healing at the same time, and then some damage or stunning and all that kind of stuff, you have Crusader. And that's pretty good. He fits into pretty much any team. You just have to find a spot for him and find something for him to do. His trinkets across the board are pretty good. He only has a couple bad ones. He has Holy Orders, which is one of the worst. But his CC set, his Farmstead trinket, those are all good. His healing trinkets are good. He makes great use of Ancestor Scroll. There's a lot going on with this dude that is awesome, and he can fill a lot of roles. And anyone that can heal from anywhere, I value quite a bit, just because, sometimes you get surprised at full torch. Sometimes you fight a boss like Shambler that likes to move you. There are a lot of bosses, or some bosses I should say, that win by moving you, and Crusader's very resistant to that. I like that a lot. He has a really good stun, so Stunning Blow hits pretty hard because it's only half damage, and he has 10 to 19 at max, so that's really good too. And And then he has Holy Lance to hit backline enemies. And one thing that I see quite a bit is people say, why do I want a slow damage dealer to kill like Bone Courtier or something like that, you know? Like why do I want something this slow to clean up a kill? And honestly, most backline enemies are going before you anyway. Only a couple characters can consistently go before them, and that's with like speed quirks or trinkets and stuff. But for the most part, unless, you know, your Hellion rolls well for speed and Bone Courtier rolls very bad for speed, like both those two things happen at the same time, then you can try and gank it with Iron Swan. But for most situations, most of your damage dealers that can hit rank 4, that can potentially kill something in one shot, aren't going before those enemies just because they're not fast enough. So I don't think that's a fair criticism by and large of Crusader. Definitely Crusader just makes it so it's not happening, and the other characters have like, you know, a one in whatever chance. But like I said, for the most part, it's not consistent enough to write home about. And Crusader hits hard enough that he will clean up most units by himself, and that's pretty nice. So if you have like a stun or damage over time, or you double tap something, Crusader will clean it up, and I like that. So he's got Holy Lance, he's got some pretty okay damage up front. He's not really a damage dealer, he's more of a support, but he can have some pretty good reach and damage projection, so that's nice. His camp skills are also really good. So he can remove mortality debuff, which only one other character can. He has a lot of stress healing, either in battle and in camp. And then the other thing I like about his stress healing, Inspiring Cry, compared to Jester's Inspiring Tune, is Jester cannot crit with his. Crusader can, and Crusader also gets you a couple HP on top of it. So it's pretty versatile. So I like Crusader a lot. I think he is deserving of S. I know some people don't think that, but he can do a lot. And I know people don't like generalist characters, but even though he's a generalist, I still think he contributes enough that he can make an impact, and I like that. Flagellant, we're putting in A. If this was like release Flagellant, he might be S, but I think A is okay for him. He does solid damage. He has a really good synergy with Plague Doctor, which I like a lot. And he has reach, he's got backline cleave, all that stuff is cool. But he's a character that, the reason I like him is no other character I feel like in this game rewards understanding the game better than Flagellant. So what I mean is, you know, you can get down to like Death's Door with him, and he's not bleeding, so he's not in like immediate danger. But you can get down to Death's Door with him, and you can understand that, well, no enemy on the team that's alive now can hit this character. So he's safe in rank 1, for instance, or rank 2 sometimes, or he gets knocked to rank 3 and he's safe. Right, just all that kind of stuff. And I like being able to understand that and then save the low health moves like Redeem and stuff, and then hit those afterwards. I like that he's a frontline healer. That's kind of common. I shouldn't say common, but you know, like Vestal, someone we think of as a healer, she's a backline healer. Arbalest is a good healer, she's a backline healer. So otherwise you have Crusader, Occultist, and Flagellant up front. And Flagellant is arguably almost the best healer in the game. It's pretty close. Vestal is really consistent, but the fact that Flagellant can preemptively heal people by putting Restoration on them with Reclaim is amazing. Reclaim also is the one thing that helps you survive a damage over time tick. So the way it works is if you're at 0 HP, so you're on Death's Door, and you have even 1,000 bleed damage, it doesn't matter, and you have 1 point of Restoration, the way the game does it is it gives you the Restoration first, so it takes you off Death's Door, and then you bleed back down to Death's Door. So if you have Restoration on top of someone that has a damage over time effect, they can survive indefinitely. That's cool. The only thing that really sucks with this character is most of his damage comes from bleed, and the Razor's Edge playstyle they try and kind of force on you or incentivize you to really just isn't good. You know, he'll eventually die if something happens, if you keep leaving him at low HP or leave him on 0. So that is not fun. He has 5 move slot syndrome, which means you can put 4 moves on him, but he really wants 5 or 6 at all times. But he's also one of the best characters, if not the best character, for skill swapping mid-dungeon. So you go through the dungeon, use your damage moves, you get like, you know, some stress on people. You go, okay, I'll probably camp after the next fight, and then you take Flagellant into the next fight, and you put Endure or Suffer and Endure on him, and then he can just endure everyone's stress down and get himself up to like 40, and then camp it off. That kind of stuff is really cool, and like I said, that rewards game knowledge. So Flagellant, very deserving of A. Can't be S, I think, in the current iteration, but if he didn't have one of the penalties on his moves, so if Extenuate or Redeem either did not have the usage limit or did not debuff him, if one of those two things were gone, I could probably consider him S. But because of that, we can't. So Sorry. Grave Robber A. This character, it's a little tragic with her. She's my favorite character, but she's a damage dealer first, but she's not a good damage dealer. All she's really good for is burst damage and trying to gank the rank 3 enemy with lunge, and that's okay. But I don't understand when this character has a damage penalty on throw dagger or pick to the face. That just doesn't make sense. Her damage is 7 to 14. It's not Shieldbreaker's, 9 to 18 or whatever she has. So I don't understand why Grave Robber has the damage penalty. She has a couple just almost unusable moves in Flashing Daggers and Toxin. Those moves just suck. Like, sure, you can do stuff around them, but honestly, they suck. So this character really is just good at Lunge and Shadow Fade. So she's never out of position. That's a big plus. But the damage range on Lunge is kind of what bothers me, is like sometimes, trinkets or whatever, you'll see like Lunge's damage range is like 12 to 14. That's a Leper damage range. That is way too high. That's too much variance for a move you need to have crit or kill something. And so she's a character that's much like Hellion and again Arbalest and Leper and herself, where crit helps them a lot just because it either ramps them or it eliminates their wide range of variance. So for Grave Robber, it eliminates the variance, and so crit's really good on her. But if you want Lunge to routinely, do like 45 and crit for 70 and stuff like that, you need Shadow Fade, and she needs some other, trinkets and whatnot to get there. So her damage dealing is good if it's set up, but it's pretty hard to set up for it to be consistent, which means that you have to look at the other things that might make her good. And she has some other good stuff. So she has pretty good trinkets just across the board, except for, I can't even think of one offhand. I think most of her trinkets are good, honestly, except for like Absinthe. And yeah. So besides that, she has a lot of scouting. She can get it in a trinkets or a camp skill, very cheap camp skill, 2 points. She can also cure 2 diseases, and she's one of 2 characters with Gallows Humor. All of that is good stuff. So even though she doesn't have, like, she has reliable damage, but it's not like consistent. I don't know, those kind of go against each other. So I'm not sure how to explain it, but I wish the damage was more consistent and easier to set up than it is. Sadly, it's not. So really, you take this character to have some good burst damage and the high speed, and then the utility camp skills and stuff. So if you're not bringing her for those things, then she's not going to feel as good as you'd want her to. Like, if you just leave her in rank 4 and just throw daggers the entire fight, then just bring Arbalest. Like, that's what you should be doing. Next is Hellion. This is something the game journalists tend to get right, and she is definitely an S tier character. So Hellion is just a massive damage monster. She can do a lot of damage. She can do it quickly. She doesn't need much setup to do it. She has reach, and she has bleed to get past prot, which is also good. She's also good for stalling because she can stun multiple enemies at once, the front line, which usually when you're stalling, the front line enemies are what's left. So that's nice to do. And then she has Adrenaline Rush to also help with stalling. The things that kind of suck are the damage penalties from Yop, Breakthrough, and Bleed Out. But for Bleed Out, the damage penalty doesn't matter because she gets a damage bonus anyway, so it doesn't matter there. And also, the bleed damage kind of skirts that. So really, the only thing that sucks about the debuffs is the speed penalty, so I don't like that. But the damage penalty is pretty non-existent. And pick Cat Hair out of the air. So she's got all that going for her. The only real weakness she has is that she requires rank 1 to be as effective as she can be. And rank 1 is a pretty nice position, which means if you want to run Hellion, you're probably not running Leper, you're probably not running Shieldbreaker, you're probably not running Highwayman, who likes to duelist in a 1 and then point blank. You can still run these characters with her, but it's usually not as effective as just leaving Hellion up front for the entire fight. She also can't move back, so if you don't have some kind of stalling move on the bar, that's kind of hard to stall there. But otherwise, like I said, damage monster, just absolute powerhouse of damage. She can ramp off crits if the target's bleeding, which is good. Bleed out. If you can just chain bleed out crits, you will kill bosses in like 3 turns. Like I had a torchless fight against Siren, and I made a video of it. I called it Hyper Carry Hellion, and the reason it was because, or the reason I called it that was I gave her some damage buffs or whatever, and she got 2 bleed out crits on Siren, and that was like the fight. Those 2 crits did like over half of Siren's HP, I'm pretty sure. So that's what I mean. She can just end fights quickly, which is nice. She also has some really ridiculous defenses. I didn't notice this until Thick told me, but she has like her base resist to bleed, blight, and I think stun, and one other one I can't remember offhand. They all start at like 40, which everyone has like 1 defense that starts at 40. She has like 4 that start at 40. So her innate resistances are higher than most characters. They might be the highest total, which is kind of crazy. And then also, she has 30 dodge at max level, which that's also good. So she has some pretty solid defenses, surprisingly, on top of that damage. So Hellion, just really good character. And if you want to go that route, I don't like going this route, but if you want to consider, like, if someone's amazing in Torchless, then they're just amazing in general. Hellion is the queen of Torchless in terms of damage anyway, because of Hell's Hairpin. So she has incredible trinkets, just some pretty good camp skills. She can go into any team as long as they let her sit up front, and she dumps a bunch of damage, and it's very quick and in large amounts. Highwayman is next. I called this dude the best character in the game in the previous version, and he's kind of been dethroned. I don't know who definitively is the best anymore, but we're going to put Highwayman in A. So much like Hellion, Highwayman is a damage monster. He has a lot of reach. His damage is pretty good overall. He can cheat action economy by getting a bunch of extra turns through a post. And then he has a really good attack in Open Vein, which has very high base accuracy, and it bleeds, so that helps him get past protection. And then it lowers their speed on top of it. So he's got a lot of good stuff going for him. But the reason I don't think he should be S anymore is because even though he can fit into most teams, which is good, he's like a very selfish character. Like, all of his damage is, or all of his buffs and stuff, they're just him, and that's it. Hellion, she can at least do some other stuff for the team, like stun and heal herself, so there's that. But unlike other rogues like Grave Robber and Bounty Hunter, Highwayman just offers no utility. He just offers damage. And damage is still important, because in this game, you still have to kill monsters. You have to win every fight in the game by killing monsters. There's no gimmick fight where you win by not attacking. So Highwayman is important for those reasons. But the thing I don't like about this character a lot is that every discussion about him always comes back to Riposte. And I understand that's kind of like the gimmick with him. But a lot of people that I've talked to about this, and just in the YouTube comments and all that, they say like, well, Riposte has 85 accuracy, which means it sucks. You only have a X amount % chance to hit people. And, it helps, or you can't stall because you can just counterattack and kill something. And my response to that is, if you understand that you're about to stall on something, usually you stall on tankier enemies or something like a Bone Courtier up front, then just don't Duelist Advance the turn before, just let it fall off. You don't have to have Riposte up. I know it sounds silly to say it that way, but Riposte is an option. You can just turn it off and then move them out of the way or something like that if you need to. But also, Duelist Advance isn't a bad attack on its own. So it's not like Toxin Trickery or Emboldening Vapors or Revenge or Adrenaline Rush where you have to spend a turn doing it. Riposte is just up. You use Duelist Advance, which is a good attack in its own right. It hits pretty hard, or like moderately hard, and it moves Highwayman, so he's never out of position, which is really cool. And then Riposte is up afterwards. It's not, you don't trade much to do it, and then if you do get attacked in your Riposte things, then you get the upside of free turns and free damage. So it's, for as many situations as Riposte can be bad in, there are some it can be amazing in. Like, you can Riposte kill something that is going to do, stress or bleed or something like that, and then you just don't take it. Because if you kill something with Riposte, it cancels all these secondary effects outside of critical hit stress. So Riposte is pretty cool in that regard. The things that I would say make Riposte bad is, yes, it is kind of anti-stall, but you don't always have to stall, as crazy as it sounds. But also, with Riposte, the best way, or at least the most consistent way to do well in this game, is to stack like stuns and speed and stuff on your team. And if you stun 2 to 4 enemies a turn with Highwayman, Riposte does nothing. And so you're wasting the value there. So for those reasons, it can kind of suck there. But honestly, I think it's such a minute point that people focus on a lot, which is why I don't like coming back to it. So I'm hoping that I'm just going to address it this one time, and then that's just it. I really don't want to keep having this discussion. But regardless of that, still think he's A. And he has some really bad trinkets overall. So, like, he has the CC set, the Crimson Court set, which is amazing. But that's it. His other trinkets are actually kind of S. So, we'll leave Highwayman in A, out of S, sad times. Next up, we're going to do Houndmaster. So, Houndmaster I'm going to put in S, just because he's so flexible. He's got a really good stun, he has reach, he has Mark synergy, he has bleed damage, he has support abilities, he has really good camp skills. Like, this character just does a lot. Kind of like Crusader, where if you tool him the correct way, then he can pretty much do whatever you need him to in terms of damage or support capability. You just can't, like, heal the HP of other people, so that's like one thing. But he can pretty much do everything else. And he also has Target Whistle, which is the best mark in the game just because it removes an insane amount of prot with a 30% higher than normal chance for no reason. I don't know why it has that, but it does. So Houndmaster, there's not much really to say besides he's just solid. He's just a solid character. Like I say, he's got the utility, he's got good trinkets, he's got good abilities. You know, even the... Like, what would be the worst move on the Houndmaster bar? The self-heal? I mean, even then, self-heals aren't bad. So, it's good. Good character. Like, he fits into any team. He can go from rank 2 to 4. He can go, even go into rank 1 if you want him to. Just really goes anywhere with anyone. Synergizes all over the place. Has all the support stuff. I could probably just drop him in S and not say anything, and then just move on to Jester, and I don't think anyone would question it. We'll see. I think he's very deserving of S, and I'm sorry that explanation was not longer. Jester, I think, is A. I don't think this character's S. There's, like, yeah, he's a great stress healer, but you can also mitigate a lot of stress through surprising enemies, stunning enemies, disrupting enemies, so you don't need just reactive stress healing. His playstyle is a little wonky. You know, you have like the finale setup, which is, it can be good, but it's a bit hard to time. He really wants to be in rank 3. It's pretty just cut and dry that he wants to be there. You can put him in 4 in some teams, or you can run like a different kind of Jester build. But really the best build for this dude is supports, and you just hit Battle Ballad for the first like 2 turns of the fight, then like slice off 1 time, and then like Inspiring Tune, and that's his 4-turn fight. That's boring. I really think this character's boring. At least when you play him that way as support. But he's effective. He's definitely effective. And I do like... Or I should say, every character likes Battle Ballad. Like, every single character wants those stats. Even Vestal, to chip in with Judgment and stuff. So he does provide a lot to the team. I just don't like how easy it is for him to provide that to the team. Like, there's no thought. It's just you hit Battle Ballad once or twice. Give your entire team literally like 3 extra trinket slots worth of stats. And then, you know, he does a stress heal, and then he can just drop a bleed or, you know, finale or something like that. So he's good. He's definitely good. I don't think he's mandatory. I think one of the traps a lot of people fall into is they think that him and Vestal are mandatory characters, and they are not. But they're good. You know, you can set them up to do really good things, but they're not mandatory. So, other than that, you know, his stats are okay. He's got low HP, but he's got good dodge. I think his other high stats, like debuff resist, something. So that's okay. But yeah, so fits in many teams as long as you can drop him into rank 3, and that's good. He does okay damage, and finale you can charge it up to be a big bomb, which is cool. But otherwise, like, if for some reason you just don't want to run Battle Ballad, then you don't really need this character. You could argue because of Battle Ballad he's S, but I'm vehemently against that, so I'm not putting him up there. Leper. The King, we're going to put in A. And there are a lot of interesting schools of thought around Leper. At this channel, I like to meme on people that say, well, Leper misses, so he sucks, which we, you know, shorten to Leper miss, Leper bad. And that, you know, that's to poke fun at these people, because like you can correct that weakness. You know, for every other character, people will talk about correcting their weaknesses, right? You go, like so-and-so, who's like Highwayman, for instance. Well, you can't really get riposte to hit the people you wanted to. It's like, okay, well, I can drop Protect Me on him, and that solves the issue, or it helps the issue. Or if you have other characters, like Arbalest doesn't do amazing on-hit damage. And it's like, well, I can mark and set her up. With Leper specifically, his weakness is accuracy. And that's it. But accuracy is a weakness of every character in this game. It's actually one of the worst things about this game, is that the chance of dodge from the enemies with the player accuracy is, it's such an out of balance level that every character in the game that plans to hit something should have accuracy. even if it's Arbalest, who has really good base accuracy, or Grave Robber with Lunge, you want to give them a little more. So if you're already giving Leper some, just give him a second one. He doesn't need like on-hit damage trinkets because his damage range is already really good. It's variant, but it hits hard. He's the hardest hitting character in the game. He does like damage trinkets, don't get me wrong there, but you're already giving characters accuracy, so just give him some more. Just give him 2 trinkets of accuracy, or camp and use reflection. Bring Jester. Bring a dodge debuff like Bellow. There are a lot of ways to deal with Leper's weakness that every other character shares in the game. He just has a little more of it than most. Although Occultist as a character people think is pretty good, and he has accuracy issues as well. Houndmaster, who I put in S, Houndmaster has trash accuracy for someone that has to hit backline targets. Bounty Hunter has bad accuracy at 105 as well. So there are a lot of characters that have bad accuracy. It's not just Leper. So that's the one thing I have to say about that. And that's the only weakness. People say he doesn't have reach. He has Intimidate. He has a way to slow down backline enemies, take them out of stealth if he needs to, does some mark tanking up front, lowers damage on threats with one move. Intimidate also has 115 accuracy, and he can still hit for a good like 4 or 5 damage with it. So that helps close out certain kills. So he does have some form of reach. You can also disrupt things so he can hit those targets, but he's so self-sufficient. Like, arguably more than Crusader. Almost. I think it's because Crusader can heal from anywhere. But Leper is a character you don't have to worry about. Like, unless he's getting crit Occultist repeatedly or something like that. But he's so self-sufficient. He can do some really good mark tanking in certain areas that rely on mark, like the Wield. Or if you're against Cultist Brawlers or whatever that likes to hit mark targets. The Warrens with the Worms, for instance. Those also have mark synergy. So he has really good answers to that. And then also, it's really hard to kill him because he has the best, not even just self-heal in the game, just the best heal in the game, probably outside of Divine Comfort, which is Solemnity, so he can heal a big chunk of his HP on top of his stress, and he can just do that over and over and stall with it, which is really awesome. And this is a character that when he gets going, like if you give him Revenge or Reflection, and you set him up to kill a boss, and he just gets into position to do it, he will kill a boss almost faster than anyone else in the game with the exception of Hellion. So that's pretty good. So he can do some really good damage when you set him up. His weaknesses aren't as big of a deal as people let on, because the lack of accuracy only really matters against backline targets, which he can't hit outside of Intimidate, which he has 115 on that. So the frontline targets, there aren't too many evasive ones. They're usually more tanky than anything else. So I think the weaknesses of Leper are blown out of proportion, and I almost considered making a Leper defense video just because I can understand that you don't like Leper. I can understand that you don't want to deal with those shortcomings. I understand that at the start of the game when accuracy trinkets are very scarce, it's hard to set them up. I understand all of that. But I'm really tired of like if you check the math, he's just the worst character. Like there's no way, there's no logical reason to think that. It's like, yeah, he can miss sometimes and whatnot, but like if you're thinking that there's like a mathematical way to say he's complete and utter trash, then you're really getting lost in the numbers game, which you're kind of doing yourself a disservice, because that's really limiting you on team building options. Because I was there too once. I thought he sucked too for the same reasons, but I used him and then I thought he was better. And it was in Torchless specifically. Torchless is something that Leper's supposed to be garbage in. I've gotten comments because I've said I use Leper and Torchless and he's one of my best units. And people say, well, you're garbage for running Leper and Torchless. I'm like, well, I beat Torchless with him. You know, that should mean something. They go, no, you're just garbage. So I don't get it, but Leper, pretty good. You know, he's already got the crazy feats of like soloing stuff, you know, thick solo stuff with him. I think Nick's done some stuff too. So just a lot of accomplishments under this character's belt. He's very strong. Just a bit like the stat taxes are kind of high, and he does want to be up front. And if he does get knocked to the back, he's worthless. So that does suck. But if you can mitigate those things, then he's pretty good. So I think A's pretty fair for him. Man-at-Arms is another character that had a redemption arc, so I'm going to put him in A. I'd like to put him in B, but honestly, I really can't argue with the effectiveness of this character, and I really think it was mostly just because I'm not good with him, is why I thought the way I did before, and I'm still not that good with him, so. But things I slept on, Crush hitting rank 3 is pretty nice. Bellow, even though it has to make the 2 checks, and I seen people like Nick say things like, well, debuff resist is commonly low among enemies. You know, it can still miss, and that sucks. Like your chance to debuff a lot of characters or targets is usually like 60 to 80, which is it's good enough. But you know, it's not like the slam dunk type of thing. But this character, he can go into a lot of teams. He can provide a lot of stuff. He has insane camp buffs, some of the best in the game. Tactics, I can't remember where I put it on my camp tier list. It might be the best camp skill in the game. I can't remember. But tactics is insane. He has weapons practice, which is really good too. He has bolster for long fights. He has other ways to mitigate stuff with, you know, stunning and slowing them down with bellow or command. Really helps you get some extra accuracy and crits, guard, things like that. So he has a very open kit for a lot of playstyles, which is pretty fun. It's just what gets me about him is like it comes back to his class trinkets for the most part aren't that good. He has a couple good ones, but he doesn't have a lot of good ones. Mirror Shield, which I actually hated, I kind of like now, which is cool because I just, if you treat it like a dodge trinket that can just get you some upsides, that's pretty nice. You know, it's only 10 dodge, but it's good. So he's got that going for him. He has riposte. His riposte has, I think, 5 or 10 more accuracy. I think it's 5 than Highwayman, so it's like base 90. Solid. It's okay enough, you know. The only issue really with this character, besides the trinkets, is the damage stat. Took me a sec to think about that. So he has 8 to 14 at max level, which is just not quite good enough. I wish it was a little tighter, you know, like if it was 8 to 16 like I think it used to be, that's, you know, sure, that's cool. But if it was like 10 to 14, just something really consistent, I would like that a bit more. If it was 10 to 16 or whatever, like if it just got stronger, that'd be nice too. I understand why it's 8 to 14, but I think between some of the other changes, like how crits were nerfed and stuff like that, and then like rebalanced, I should say, because there are videos out there, you can find Man-at-Arms in like early access or vanilla Darkest Dungeon, could just riposte for like 50 damage. And I'm pretty sure Red Hook like saw that and they nerfed some stuff, they nerfed his damage and all that, so I understand why that happened, but he's not quite there as a damage dealer, and even though he has some really good moves, he's pretty tough to play, and it's really difficult to figure out like the best things for him to do on turns a lot of the time. So it's like, you know, as good as bolster is, it's only good in boss fights. So a lot of people out there just see it and go, oh, that's 10 dodge and, you know, minus stress, and they hit on like turn 1 of a hallway fight, and that's too slow. So it's really easy to screw up with this character. But outside of that and some sad stat choices that I'm not a fan of, and his bad trinkets, that's why I put him in A. I can't put him higher. I definitely don't think he's S. He's just not, he's not there at the damage. If he had a bit more damage, I could probably give it to him, but he's also not mandatory. Like, you can use other guard characters in the game to get through the missions that need guards. There are a couple missions out there where people think you do need guard characters. I'm not going to spoil what they are, but there's only one mission really where he's MVP that I can think of, maybe 2. So, and he can show up and be MVP, which is cool, but like I said, a bit lacking in damage. A bit tough to build correctly, something you really need matchup knowledge for, and just not quite enough for me to give him S. But I think A is fine. You know, we have 3 tiers. I think A is more than fair, especially after I put him in B. Occultist, one of my favorites, we're gonna put in A as well. I considered S for him, but I think A is good enough. So the Occultist, he has really bad accuracy on his attacks, so his damage is kind of I don't want to say hit and miss, but you know, it's not that reliable, and his damage stat is kind of low. It's 7 to 13. His crit rates are monstrous. That's pretty nice. But Occultist is really good as just a support unit who can do okay damage when he needs to. So with his kit, you can choose between like lowering damage and protection. You get mark synergy. You can pull things. You can stun things. He can heal from anywhere, which is really, really good. And then he has a couple of attacks that are solid. You know, even Roof Spaghetti's okay. So the issue with this character is that he's pretty frail, and a lot of his bonuses or his playstyle that you're supposed to, you know, like you're intended to do with him, is to be lower light, because he lowers torchlight. His Crimson Court set works under 60 torch, and when you get into torchless, things get way more dangerous. So depending on what quirks he has and stuff like that, he might die, or he'll take a lot of damage, and it's hard for him to protect himself. His healing is also unreliable. Like, mathematically, it's better than Vestal's for single target. Like, he's mathematically the single best, or the best single target healer in the game, but this is what I was talking about with Leper. You can't get lost in the numbers for something like that. And it's like, sure, on average, his heal is stronger than Vestal's. It is. But this dude can still hit 0 when you're at death's door. Like, you just get crit to death's door, you know, for like 20 damage or something, you know, that happens. And then he hits 0, and that's frightening. So because of that, I don't think he could ever BS, even though he's fun and he can do a lot of stuff, which is cool. And, you know, he has really cool camp skills. He can remove mortality debuffs. He's one of 2 characters that can, which is really nice. But just the fact that he should have his heal on at all times, just because it's always good to have like emergency healing. Even if you have like Arbalest as main healer, it's good to have Occultist there to just catch someone if he needs to. Just the fact that his heal isn't reliable. It's not like 3 to 20 or 5 to 20 or something like that. If it was 2 to 20, he might BS, but it's not. And his heal starts off really bad. It's like 0 to 13. So he can't BS in my eyes, but he's fun to play. He works in just about any team. You can throw the student in any team. He can find something to do. You can put him up front. He can stun stuff. He can disrupt. You can put him in the back. He can contribute on damage. So he's got a lot of stuff he can do. He can fit in a lot of teams, which I do value quite a lot. And he can heal from anywhere. I like those 2 things like more than most things when rating characters. But like I said, just because he's inconsistent on like that one thing and his accuracies are kind of bad, and he has a couple bad trinkets out there too. Let's not forget that. He has a couple really good trinkets. Like, he has some of the best out there with Demon's Cauldron, Vial of Sand, and Eldritch Incense is pretty good too. The 15 damage and 6 crit against Eldritch is nice. So he's got those things going for him, but like I said, he's got like that green trinket, which is eh. His Crimson Quartz set, Vial of Sand is a busted trinket, and then like the Tentacle or whatever, the Blood Pack, that thing kind of is mediocre. So between those things, I think he's A. And I think that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm going to put Musketeer in B. Maybe saying she's the exact same character as Arbalest, and for most intents and purposes, you are correct. The reason I'm putting Musk in B is because she has the worst farmstead trinket, and you can't pick between her and Arbalest. You can't turn on Musketeer and turn off Arbalest. It's either Arbalest or both of them. And Musketeer is a double, effectively. She's a reskin copy of Arbalest. So in your game, especially if you're like in a challenge run where you really need to have like high quality draws on recruits and trinkets, you have a character that's doubling up on Arbalest stuff and they don't share. So you can find a good Arbalest off the stagecoach and then just see Musketeer trinkets for like the next 10 weeks. That stuff kind of sucks. So even though they're almost identical, legitimately they probably should both be A. Just the fact that she can tank your rewards and your stagecoach if you don't want more Arbalest stuff is reason enough for B. But honestly, in terms of functionality, they're the same characters. So take this with a grain of salt. This isn't a real ranking. This is just kind of like to just to show that there are differences between the two. Like, you could just put them together, you know. You just leave her there and that's the end of it. But I'm gonna put her down here. Also to, you know, piss off the Musketeer enthusiasts in my community. So Plague Doctor, S. Even though she's very trinket reliant, just the fact that Blinding Gas exists as a button, that makes her S tier. She's fast enough to get it off and stun both backline enemies. And think about it like this: if she can go first, even if she doesn't go first, if the backline enemies live to turn 2, she has effectively stopped like 40 to 50 stress consistently. I guess the low end would be like 20, but she can stop anywhere between 20 to 50 stress a turn. That's insane. She's also fast enough that when she uses battlefield medicine to cure bleed and blight off people, it's effectively healing them for a very high amount instead of healing them for like, you know, 3, like the actual on hit amount being 3. You remove like a 9 damage bleed on top of that, and suddenly you effectively healed for 12. So she's really good at being proactive, which I love. I think proactive playstyles are the best in the game. Plague Doctor is a very proactive character, one of the most proactive out there. And she has some other interesting stuff going on, like she can rotate Blinding Gas with Plague Grenade to take down backline units. She can use Noxious Blast, much like Antiquarian can use Flash Powder, to bully low accuracy enemies or size 2s or something like that you're stalling on. So you can lower their accuracy by, you know, 21 or whatever, which is a very good amount on top of everything else that she's already doing. She has Incision, which is an okay move. It's better with Bloody Herb, obviously, but it's okay on its own. And then she can also, in those really long fights out there, she can give you a bunch of bonus damage with Emboldening Vapor. So this character has a lot of utility, and she does okay damage. It's just damage over time, which, you know, that might not be everyone's cup of tea, but I personally like the control playstyle, so I like to stun things, stack a bunch of damage over time, just watch them bleed out over 3 turns, that kind of stuff. Plague Doctor is very good at that. Really good at mitigating just damage that you take. And she has Disorienting Blast too, which I forgot to talk about. So there's a lot of utility in this character. She has incredible trinkets. Like, top to bottom, her trinkets are nuts, except for the Disease Herb and Subject 40 Notes. Like, those are the only 2 bad ones that she has. Like, everyone else, you know, they have a couple good trinkets. Someone like Crusader has a few, like, really good class trinkets. Plague Doctor has only 2 bad class trinkets, I would say. And even then, the Crimson Court set together is still pretty solid. Subject 40 Notes aren't that bad. It's like 25 H, or no, it's like 10 HP at max level, which is good. But I can't think of a weakness really, besides the fact that she can't do anything if she gets knocked out of position, and that her dodge baseline is very bad. So if you don't have Ashen Distillation from Farmstead, then her dodge is going to feel very lackluster. But with all of that in mind, her camp skills are great. She can cure disease on herself and someone else. And if someone got really beat up in camp, she can heal half of their HP, which is nuts. She can give herself bonus accuracy through either trinkets or, like, most of her trinkets have bonus accuracy, her good ones, and self-medicate also. This character just has a lot. And then if you get her any form of speed on top of that, so if you get her Orange Trinket, Blasphemous Vial, and then you get her any form of speed, you get her Feather Crystal, you get her On Guard, you get her Quick Reflexes, Luminous, something like that, and this character becomes oppressive. Like, if you take her to any dungeon and she just consistently goes first and stuns the backline enemies, and then you kill one of them by the end of the turn, you will notice just a smoother gameplay experience because of Plague Doctor. So I think she's S. I would say between her and Hellion, even though I used to say Highwayman was the best character in the game, I don't want to say someone's the best anymore. But if I had to pick someone as the best, it's between Hellion and Plague Doctor at this point. They're both insane. But Plague Doctor is a very broken character, and I hope that they tone her down a little bit in the sequel. Only got 2 more to do now. So we have Shieldbreaker. I know a lot of people want her in S. She's not S. She's A. Shieldbreaker is a great character, but remember, this is something I said in the previous tier list iterations, that as good as she is, she doesn't start being good until level 2. Because at level 2, she can get her level 3 skills and weapon. Her level 3 weapon is broken. She gets 2 speed and like a huge damage range off it, like a big damage bump. It's like 1 on the minimum, like 2 on the top end. Like, that's just really good. So she gets a pretty big damage spike. She gets a 2 speed point spike, which is amazing. Impale gets Blight, so if you want to cleave with Impale, it gets a lot better. So this character takes off at like the end of Apprentice. Going into Veteran, she's really good. And then when she gets into Champion, she's a monster. But Champion is the shortest part of the game, usually. But you don't have to fight all that. Like with Crimson Court, I would say that Baron's really the only mandatory one. You can, like, I've done playthroughs where I skip Viscount and Countess, but Baron is almost mandatory in most playthroughs, so you kind of have to address him, so that's why Veteran's more prominent. But once you hit, like, Champion and you get, like, a couple units to level 6, you can just skip all the bosses that are out there, and you can just go and finish the game by beating the Darkest Dungeon. So Champion is a very short period of time in the game, unless you want to spend post-game farming quirks and stuff and doing Endless Harvest. Shieldbreaker's amazing there. She's pretty good in Veteran, but she's not that good in Apprentice, and a lot of deaths and bad stuff happen in Apprentice because you don't have trinkets, you don't have good quirks, you're still looking for a good roster to put together and stuff like that, and that's where Shieldbreaker's at her weakest, and some teams can't deal with her Nightmare mechanic, especially if you're a newer player and you don't know how they work, especially the sequential order and stuff. So she has a lot of interesting stuff going on with her. She does have some really powerful stuff. She has Puncture and Pierce, which are both broken moves, just flat out they're broken. She can block, which is nice. But like I said, this character isn't the absolute menace that people say she is until champion. She's great in veteran, she's pretty bad in apprentice, and if you think of the game for the entire journey, the entire duration, she's only good for about half of it. So like, if you think of her being good for half of it, then I don't think she should be S. I think she should be A, although she can be S for late game, if that makes sense. So I do like this character. I do think she's still almost close to pay to win, just because she is that strong sometimes, but it's a good joke to have. So she works in a lot of teams, but not all teams. So if you have certain characters like Hellion that want to be in rank 1, or Leper, she can still kind of work with them, but it's not ideal. So really you just have to have a team that can let her move around and do stuff. But she's also never out of position, which is nice, and she has some pretty good trinkets outside of, like, what are some bad ones? The blue one, the Fang Spear Tip, that thing is just trash. That's garbage. Otherwise, even her common trinkets, or like her low level ones, like the white and green trinkets, those are okay. I've ran them before. Dancer's Foot Wraps are really good, surprisingly, for just 2 speed. If Dancer's Foot Wraps had like 20 move chance on them, I would run them like constantly. They're really good for that. Or they would be really good at that point. But her armor, Curboli, I just never pronounced it correctly, I'm sorry. But I love that thing. Spectral Spirit Tip, also good. Her Crimson Quartz set, really good, just doesn't have accuracy. Same problem that Plague Doctor has. But Shieldbreaker, just a good unit. Pierce wins everywhere, and Puncture is very disruptive. And those 2 moves on top of block are good enough for A. And you could argue S, but I'm not going to for reasons I've stated. Vestal is a character that I wanted to put in B so bad. The first 4 drafts of this list, I think, or the first 3 drafts, had Vestal in B. But I can't do it. I know a lot of you think she's S, she's not S. She's A. We'll split the difference there. So Vestal has some pretty big weaknesses. Well, let's talk about her strengths first. So she's the most consistent healer in the game, which does mean something. As good as Divine Comfort is, which is the group heal, that's not good until about level 2 or 3. That's when it starts picking up. Level 1 Divine Comfort is trash, because it can roll 1 to 3, and you can just hit 1 like 3 times in a row. It's really bad there. And then people like to say, well, she can get multiple people off Death's Door, which is incredible. That is a good thing to have. But how many times are you in that situation? Like, I'm not trying to talk down to like the newer players, because that can happen more commonly when you're new at the game. You don't quite understand what's happening. You don't know how to mitigate damage and like what to stop or disrupt. But unless you're playing Torchless, if you have a proficient amount of experience in the game, you do not have multiple people on Death's Door that often. She can help them not be on Death's Door by spamming Divine Comfort, which is pretty nice. But I don't know, it's good. It's still a broken heal, but that's why you take her. So her single heal is okay. It's not the best. Other characters can do pretty good single healing, like we talked about. Flagellant, Crusader, Arbalest. I don't want to say Occultist, but you know, those characters can do pretty good single healing. She has a damage penalty on Judgment, which means if she wants to chip in on rank 4, she's not hitting that hard, but you know, I talked about how Leper can chip in, so it's still okay for her. Her accuracies aren't, you know, stellar. She has a stun, but it's not a strong stun. She's just solid. She's a very solid unit, so I think A is fair. But the thing I don't like about her is that pretty much half of her bar is just not usable. Like, sure, you can run Bonk. Like, Bonk is fun. I've ran it. I've made teams with it. It's fun. It is fun to watch her hit stuff really hard, and you can make it work. Hand of Light's actually a pretty decent skill. It's just the thing that Hand of Light leads into, which is giving her accuracy and damage. It doesn't make her good enough to warrant what you're leading into. Like, you do Hand of Light and then Mace Bash, it's not good. It's not stellar. You know, it's okay. But the reason she's not that good is because another reason is because her stats aren't great. For the most part, they're pretty average, but her crit rates are atrocious. The reason Mace Bash isn't a good build, it's not because she has like 7 to 13 damage or whatever it is. It's because her crit rate is just garbage. So she can't be relied on for, you know, consistent like damage or having a chance of high burst damage. She can't ramp. You know, she's a support unit, so you just run her with the same 4 skills, you put her in the back of the party, and that's like her entire existence. Her camp skills are pretty good, outside of Chant. Chant's pretty garbage, but the rest of them are pretty solid. Sanctuary is pretty fun to get value out of. But she can go on any team. Like, she's very similar to Hellion for instance, where Hellion can just go on any team, you just put her in rank 1, she's done. Vestal can go on any team, you put her in rank 3 or 4, and she's done. And she just chips in. But like I said, I didn't put her in B just because she's really consistent. But also, as much as I want to trash on this character, like, I realize might be some bias, but I take this character to like the hardest missions in the game. There's one of the end game missions. I'm not going to spoil which one, but one of the end game missions is considered the hardest mission in the entire game. I take Vestal to that every single time, with the exception of one. One of the stories I tell is that the first time I beat the game, I did not use Vestal in any of the end game missions. There's no Vestal with the candles on the character portrait, so there's that. But I take her to the hardest mission, quote unquote. I take her to the final mission, or the final boss of, or official, boss of Crimson Court, Countess. I take her to the Countess fight. I take her to Farmstead sometimes. Like, as much as I don't like her, I take her to the hardest stuff that's out there because I need the reliable healing sometimes. So because of that, I can't put her in B. But really, once you understand like damage mitigation with stuns or disruption or getting surprised and being fast and stuff like that, Vestal doesn't contribute as much. And I think A is fine. You know, we only have 3 tiers, so we're really just splitting hairs at this point. But I'm going to leave Vestal there. I'm not going to go out with a hot take, as much as it saddens me. Ooh, I forgot to talk about this as well. A lot of her trinkets are garbage. Her, you know, her Crimson Court set's actually okay. Her Farmstead trinket's pretty good. Like, Tome of Holy Healing's pretty good. But honestly, outside of that, she has some really bad trinkets. Haste Chalice, Virtue Chalice, those suck. Sacred Scroll is a trap. You know, you can just use Junia's Head or Tome of Holy Healing, and you don't lock yourself out of damage and stuns. The -10 stress is pretty negligible in the grand scheme of things. I wish these dogs would stop barking. But yeah, long story short, reliable, consistent, goes in any team, doesn't have like the stats or the impact offensively to justify something higher than A. So that's it for Vestal, and that's it for this tier list. So we're done. I'm sure, how long is this? Got an hour and 15 minutes recorded. I'm sure it's gonna be shorter than that in editing, but let me get Echo. Come here. Come here, Echo. Close out the tier list with Echo. So yeah, that's the tier list. Thanks everyone for watching. Thanks everyone for that watched the other versions of it, and you know, kind of got my channel started. It's greatly appreciated. You're all very special to me, and I like doing these tier lists, and I look forward to doing them in DD2. So we'll see what's out there. But that's it for this one. As for videos coming up, I'm probably gonna do the Farmstead guide. I'm not sure. I kind of waffled on it. I kind of don't want to do it now, but we'll see. But this is kind of one of the closing videos of Darkest Dungeon 1. I'm gonna make like 1 or 2 others maybe to close out the game, and then we might revisit it later. But that'll be it, and we'll move on to DD2. So thanks everyone for watching, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you're thinking down below, respectfully, and we'll see you next time. Isn't that right? Isn't that right, Echo? We're not here for your cat, Shuff. We're here for the info. Meanwhile, the other comments, Shuff, we're here for the cat, not for you. Fair. Understandable. All right, Echo, say goodbye.